I truly never expected this. After all the bitterness and longing, after I finally won him over, he lost his memory. The irony wasn't lost on me, crashing down with waves of exhaustion and helplessness. My nails dug sharply into my palms, leaving crescent moons against the skin. I stared at Julian's face, pale, beautiful, and utterly impassive, struggling to maintain my composure. "You've forgotten?" My voice was barely a whisper, tight with disbelief. Julian met my gaze, his expression unreadable except for a flicker of apology deep within his eyes. "Yes," he confirmed, the single word falling like a stone into the silence of the hospital room. It was almost laughable. A bitter laugh threatened to escape, but I choked it back. Ever since I was young, I had secretly harbored a crush on him, hiding my feelings, tamping them down. Then, 3 years ago, fueled by liquid courage, I confessed. After that night, I shed my reserve, pursuing him relentlessly, or perhaps, more accurately, pleading with him, only to be met with rejection time and time again. My heart had already strained to its breaking point. Just as I was finally ready to let go, to accept defeat, he'd turned around. He'd finally said yes. And now, cruelly, his memory had rewound to the period just after that drunken confession, erasing the entire span of our relationship, landing us back before we were ever truly together. "Whether you believe me or not," I said, my voice steadier now, though brittle around the edges, "you and I have been together for quite some time now." I pulled out my phone, desperate to find tangible proof, something to jog his lost memories. As my thumb scrolled frantically through our chat history, the dam finally broke. Tears welled up, blurring the screen, then spilled hotly down my cheeks. The stark reality of our dynamic, even when we were together, hit me with fresh force. It had never changed. It was always me bending, appeasing, desperately trying to please him. And it was always him offering vague responses, indifferent, distant. My heart felt like it was being squeezed mercilessly by an invisible hand, then abruptly released, leaving a raw, gaping ache as air rushed back into my lungs. I raised a hand, using the back of it to roughly wipe away the falling tears, and forced myself to look up at him again. Julian's long lashes swept down, casting shadows on his sculpted cheekbones. His expression was unreadable, his voice so soft it was almost lost. "Is that so?" A wave of bitterness surged through me. Steeling myself, I abruptly stood up, the movement sharp in the quiet room. "I lied," I said, the words tasting like ash. "I'm sorry. I was giving up. Right here, right now. Forgetting, erasing this path we'd started down. Felt like the kinder option. For both of us. After all, life doesn't offer endless replays, endless chances to endure the same pain. Youth doesn't last forever, and neither, it seemed, did this kind of love. There weren't that many 3-year spans left in me to gamble." Julian's strikingly handsome face showed a flicker of complex emotion, confusion, maybe something else. His thin lips pressed into a tight line, but he remained silent. Wasn't the reaction I'd anticipated, and it left me momentarily adrift, unsure. I opened my mouth, wanting to say more, perhaps explain, perhaps rage, but no sound came out. Julian, ever adept at smoothing over awkwardness, quickly masked his uncertainty. He regained his usual cool, self-possessed air and changed the subject. "Sit down. Why are you standing?" I shook my head, grabbing my bag from the chair. "Since you don't want your parents to worry, I won't say anything about us. I've arranged for a caregiver. I'll come by when I have time." Julian murmured a soft, "Okay." His narrow eyes, cool and distant, flickered towards me for a fraction of a second. "Thank you." I didn't reply. I simply turned and closed the door behind me, fleeing as if escaping a fire, my steps quick and unsteady down the sterile corridor. Letting someone go didn't feel as monumental or dramatic as I'd imagined. Perhaps every previous rejection, every setback, had been a small step on this path toward finally giving up. Today was just the destination. Exhaustion washed over me, heavy and complete. My legs felt weak, trembling slightly. I leaned against the cool hospital wall just outside his wing and slowly sank into a crouch, pressing a hand against the hollow ache in my chest. I fought back the stinging sensation behind my eyes, unable to name the feeling swirling inside me. It wasn't just sadness. It was deeper, more weary than that. Julian's hesitation hadn't escaped me back there. And I knew deep down the likely eventual outcome was that we could be together again if I pushed, if I waited. But who could endure it? Gaining something precious only to have it snatched away is always the cruelest torture. The cycle felt unbearable. I would rather have chased him for 6 fruitless years than have spent 3 years finally achieving my dream, only to wake up and find myself brutally reset to square one. I convinced myself I wasn't heartbroken, just tired. Yet, driving away from the hospital, my mind was clearly elsewhere. Distracted and reeling, I rear-ended the car in front of me. Thankfully, it was a low-speed collision. Staring at the 7 or 8 meters separating my front bumper from the car ahead, a strange, almost hysterical giggle bubbled up inside me. "Hey, lady, you hit my brand new Lumbo, and you're laughing." The driver I'd hit emerged, leaning casually against my hood, looking at me with genuine bewilderment. I looked up, taking in his clean-cut, handsome face radiating youthful energy. The wave of despair that had clung to me since the hospital seemed to momentarily dissipate. Maybe this was the charm of youth. Uncomplicated, direct. "I'm so sorry," I said, fumbling for my phone in my purse. "Give me your contact info. I'll take full responsibility for the repairs." He scanned me from head to toe, his lips pursed thoughtfully. Then he offered unsolicited advice. "You're really pretty. Don't do this kind of thing." Before I could process his words or react to the implication, he turned, hopped back into his gleaming supercar, and sped off, leaving me standing there stunned. It took me a full minute to understand. He thought I was some kind of gold digger, renting a luxury car to fish for wealthy men. Were all young people this imaginative these days? Shaking my head with a mixture of amusement and exasperation, I climbed back into my car. The absurdity of the encounter stayed with me as I drove away. Later, at the high-end auto body shop, while waiting in the customer lounge for a driver to pick me up, I noticed the same young man from the accident sprawled on one of the plush sofas, fast asleep. Well, talk about serendipity. I walked over and gently nudged his shoulder. He stirred, blinking owlishly, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Recognition dawned, followed by surprise. "What are you doing here?" "Getting my car fixed," I explained dryly. "And for the record, I wasn't fishing. Don't let your imagination run wild, kid. What's your name? I'll put the repairs for your car on my tab." "Leo," he mumbled, then quickly added. "Leo Ashton." He sat up straighter, suddenly more alert. "No need for that," he said, grabbing my wrist as I turned to speak to the service manager. He pulled out his phone, his gaze lowered as he tapped the screen, bringing up a QR code. "Just scan me, sister." He used the same slightly cheeky term as before. I hesitated. I should have refused, maintained a professional distance. But looking at the faint blush creeping up his ears, his soft dark hair, slightly tousled from sleep, his long lashes, and the hint of youthful roundness still clinging to his cheeks, my heart softened unexpectedly. I scanned the code with my phone, adding him to my contacts. Sophia Bellwether. "Nice name, sister," Leo commented, glancing at my contact details. He flashed a grin, revealing 2 small, sharp canine teeth that gave his otherwise cool features a playful edge. He had those long, hooded eyes that could look aloof, a high-bridged nose and a sharp jawline. But the slight softness in his cheeks and that sudden toothy smile completely disarmed you. The words slipped out before I could stop them. "Since you won't let me pay for the repairs, let me buy you dinner sometime?" Leo's eyebrows shot up, a playful arrogance entering his expression. "Make it tonight." I couldn't help but laugh aloud. "Okay, tonight it is." My unrestrained laughter seemed to fluster him. The tall young man, easily over 6 feet, felt his ears flush crimson again. He bit his back teeth in a way that was both fierce and endearingly flustered. When my McLaren was finally ready, sparkling under the showroom lights, I drove Leo out for dinner. He lounged in the passenger seat, one arm resting on the open window frame, a mischievous grin playing on his lips. He looked impossibly cool, a little bit bad. "First time riding shotgun with a girl driving," he remarked casually. "From the sound of it, you've had plenty of girls in this seat," I teased, glancing sideways at him with a smile. He certainly had the looks for it. Girls probably flocked to him. His face didn't easily betray him, but his ears gave him away instantly, turning a telltale shade of crimson. Endearingly innocent despite the roguish face. "No," he mumbled quickly. "Never." I chuckled softly and turned the steering wheel, navigating a corner, deciding not to tease him further. Just as I pulled up in front of the restaurant, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was my mother. "Sophia." Julian's back from his trip, isn't he? Why can't I reach him? His mother just called me asking. Damn it. Absorbed in my own turmoil, I'd completely forgotten Julian's phone was smashed. His phone got lost. I rattled off the lie before she could probe further. We're actually having dinner right now. I'll take him. To get a new SIM card this afternoon. Got to go, Mom. I hung up quickly, hoping the abruptness would prevent more questions. Beside me, Leo watched me with wide, knowing eyes. You don't even blink when you lie, sister. Why did I suddenly feel a pang of shame? After dinner, we conveniently spotted a phone store nearby. I walked in, quickly picked out a sleek black model, paid for it and turned, nearly colliding with Leo, who had followed me inside. Is that for your boyfriend? He asked, his long, thick lashes fluttering slightly, making him look unexpectedly nervous. Ex-boyfriend, I corrected automatically. You're this good to your ex? He asked, sounding genuinely surprised. I tucked the phone box into my bag and motioned for this clearly astonished young man to head back to the car. Where to? I'll drop you off. You should deliver the phone first, Leo countered, leaning back in the passenger seat with a deliberately casual air, chin slightly lifted, looking handsome and defiant. I'm not in a rush. Don't want your ex to be anxious. A small laugh escaped me. Just broke up. I clarified, then on impulse, I pressed the accelerator perhaps a little too hard. The engine roared and the car surged forward smoothly. Young people seemed to enjoy the thrill. A wide smile spread across Leo's face. Good. Now that you've broken up, you'll realize the next one is better. The implication was clear. He was the better next one. Was he? I felt a corner of my mouth lift in a small smile but didn't comment. When we reached the hospital, Leo started to unbuckle his seatbelt. I leaned over, pressing the release button back into place. Stay put. I'll be right back. Leo's lips formed a slight pout, displeasure written plainly across his face, so unlike Julian's guarded expressions. But he obediently leaned back against the luxurious seat, pulling out his phone with a lazy air to occupy himself. I took the phone upstairs. Entering Julian's room, I found him sitting quietly on the bed, flipping through a moderately thick book, an aura of calm, quiet stillness surrounding him. Hearing me enter, Julian looked up, his gaze landing on the phone box in my hand. Thank you. Without a word, I opened the nightstand drawer, retrieved his old phone, shattered beyond recognition, swapped the SIM card into the new one, powered it up and made sure everything was working before handing it to him. He reached out with long, slender fingers to take it, his pale lips parting slightly. Guessing he was about to thank me again, I cut him off, a touch of impatience coloring my tone. You've said thank you more today than in the entire past year. What's happened? Did losing your memory make you polite? A flicker of surprise crossed his features, a rare crack in his composure. Then his sculpted face softened into a genuine, gentle smile that sent a sharp pang through my heart. Maybe all these years I had been the one making things difficult, trapping us both with the weight of my expectations. A wave of bitterness surged, hot and suffocating. I realized I was losing control, quickly lowered my head. I'm going. Without waiting for a reply, I fled, practically running from the room. The moment the door clicked shut behind me, tears escaped, sliding down my cheeks. I paused in the hallway, took a deep, steadying breath and wiped them away. It's okay, I told myself fiercely. Mistakes can be corrected. But why was loving someone I could have eventually won, someone who had finally agreed, considered a mistake? A mistake so profound that fate itself felt the need to intervene, to reset everything with something as cliched and dramatic as amnesia? The realization dawned. I wasn't just tired enough to let go. I was resentful. Resentful of the unfairness, of having the prize I'd fought so long and hard for snatched away just as I'd grasped it. By the time I slid back into the driver's seat of my car, my emotions were outwardly calm, carefully locked away. Leo, however, turned his head, his gaze piercing. You were crying? My heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? I instinctively denied it, keeping my eyes fixed on the road ahead, avoiding his gaze. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw his expression shudder, his features settling into a cool remoteness that reminded me unsettlingly of Julian. The resemblance made my already frayed nerves jangle. I pressed the accelerator, eager to put distance between us and the hospital. No need to drive me, he said quietly, his voice devoid of its earlier teasing quality. Just drop me off when you get where you're going. His unexpected consideration made me feel slightly guilty for wanting to ditch my passenger duties. I nodded curtly and steered the car towards my company's building. The next few days were a blur of work. I immersed myself in a demanding project, barely sleeping, not even going home. When it was finally completed, files closed and emails sent, that familiar sense of aimless emptiness washed over me again. Before the melancholy could fully take hold, my mother's furious voice erupted from my phone. Sophia Bellwether, Julian was in a car accident, a serious one, and you kept it from us? How did you find out? I asked, my stomach sinking. How could I not find out? If I hadn't gone to the hospital today with your father for his checkup, how long were you planning to hide this? Get over here right now. Julian and my parents both knew we were together. I'd kept the accident quiet, fearing the pressure from our families, the unspoken expectation might force him back into a relationship he didn't remember, driven by obligation rather than feeling. That would be unfair to him, and a betrayal of myself. Panting slightly after rushing back to the hospital, I pushed open Julian's door to find him sitting calmly and composed on the bed, surrounded by both sets of anxious parents fussing over him. Oh, Sophia's here, my mother beamed, turning to Julian's parents with practiced pleasantries. Let Sophia take care of Julian now. In my parents' eyes, the Julian they knew, only version I ever let them see, was always gentle, considerate, and attentive towards me, no matter how many times I privately nursed my hurt feelings after his cool dismissals. Sophia must be exhausted after her long day at work, Julian's mother countered, her smile warm and kind. It's nothing too serious really, and there's the caregiver. Let the young couple have a moment, then Sophia should go home and rest. Once the parents finally bustled out, promising to return later, I approached Julian's bedside. Didn't you say you were lying? Julian lifted his gaze slightly, his expression unreadable. I sat down in the chair beside his bed and, mostly out of habit, absent-mindedly picked up an apple from the fruit basket and began peeling it with the small knife provided. And you? Weren't you hoping I was lying? Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. I managed a small, humorless laugh, offering him the peeled apple. Just as I was about to speak, he broke the silence. Since I agreed back then, I see no reason to back out now just because of this. An odd sense of calm settled over me, a strange detachment. Are you willing, though? I asked, the question surprisingly easy to voice, almost indifferent to the answer. Honestly, Julian, without the memory of my 3 years of pursuit, without whatever pity or obligation finally reached its peak, are you willing to just settle with me? His dark eyes, usually so adept at hiding emotion, like the surface of flawless jade, flickered with something unreadable. His voice held a trace of helplessness. Sophia, I just don't remember. That sliver of tenderness, however unintentional, shattered my carefully constructed defenses. My voice thickened with unshed tears as I finally confronted the raw truth. You really don't love me. Back at square one, I simply didn't have the strength or the courage to start the chase all over again. I pulled out my phone, opened our chat history again, and thrust it into his hands. He lowered his gaze, scrolling through the messages, his expression slowly tightening. After a long moment, he looked up, his lips pressed thin, a mixture of frustration and profound guilt clouding his beautiful features. I'm sorry. No one needs to apologize for not loving someone. I shook my head, blinking back fresh tears as I took the phone back. I managed a shaky smile. You should rest. It seems like you're recovering well. I'll come pick you up when you're discharged in a couple of days. Don't feel guilty. I couldn't stay another second. Forcing myself to give up was agonizing enough without prolonging the farewell. I turned and left, forcing myself not to look back, not even a final glance at the man who had consumed my thoughts for so long. After the last distracted driving incident cost me a small fortune in repairs, this time I drove with extreme caution, crawling along the city streets. Waiting at a red light, a WeChat notification popped up on my car's display. Sister, what a coincidence. Curious, I tapped it open. The next message followed immediately. Look behind you. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Leo's pale arm extended from the window of the car behind mine, waving slowly, lazily. In a life often filled with complexity and fatigue, who truly rejoices at random encounters? Most people would probably just lower their heads, choosing solitude. But undeniably in that moment, his simple "what a coincidence" lifted my spirits, a small spark of lightness in the gray. My phone rang. It was him. Going to shoot some pool with friends. Wanna join, sister? Leo had invited me out several times these past few days, and I'd politely declined each time, still navigating my own emotional wreckage. But the boundless energy of youth seemed infinite. He wasn't easily deterred. I glanced at the clock. It was only 9. Still early. Going home meant facing the same emptiness. Why not? Leo's car zipped past mine and I followed close behind. We entered a dimly lit private room at the pool hall. A scattering of guys and girls, all seemingly around Leo's age, lounged on the sofas. For the first time, the weight of my age pressed down on me. Damn, I was getting old. Holy crap, Leo, where'd you find such a hot older sister? A clean-cut guy in a blue t-shirt jumped up, reaching to sling an arm around Leo's shoulder. Leo deftly sidestepped the playful grab, wagging a finger. One of a kind. Not for sharing. A touch smug, a hint of pride, it was almost comical. Later, as the game started, I leaned against the bar, swirling the amber liquid in my glass, watching Leo line up a shot. The focused intensity in his profile, the smooth lines of his back as he leaned over the table. A flicker of a darker impulse sparked within me. It wasn't affection, not exactly. It was release. A buildup of pressure. A desperate need to vent the toxic emotions that had been churning inside me since Julian's accident. I downed the rest of my drink in one gulp, pushing the unwelcome thought away. Let me play a game with you, I called out, my voice louder than intended. His eyes lit up instantly, that bright, almost feral grin revealing those signature canine teeth again. He looked both innocent and dangerously appealing. I like to win, you know. I picked up a cue, chalking the tip with deliberate slowness. Sure. I'll let you win. My simple words ignited a chorus of playful jeers and whistles from the others, who crowded around to watch and tease Leo. Julian had loved playing pool. Years ago, determined to find common ground, any ground, I'd even hired a professional coach, practicing until I was practically good enough to compete. But Leo was genuinely good, displaying a natural talent and sharp focus. I made a small deliberate error midway through the game, remembering he liked to win, and frankly not having the energy for a serious match, I didn't fight too hard, letting the game naturally flow towards his victory. He sank the final ball, then stood leaning on his cue under the stark spotlight, his long eyes slightly narrowed, fixed on me. The smile playing on his lips was bold, triumphant. Behind him, his friends erupted in applause and cheers. The scene fractured into a vibrant, noisy painting before my eyes. In that instant, the strange energy of the room ignited something in me. The heavier chi pent-up frustration that had settled in my chest since Julian's accident felt like it had been punctured. A dangerous craving surged through me. A desire for salvation, or maybe, just maybe, the urge to drag someone else into the abyss with me. Leo, I thought grimly, I'm not a good person. I tried to tell you. Did you let me win, sister? Leo set down his cue and walked towards me, stopping impossibly close. His breath was warm and light against my skin, his eyes dancing with amusement. It seemed winning, whether earned or gifted, was enough to make him happy. The reckless impulse solidified. I tilted my head up, meeting his gaze with a smile. Does letting you win come with a reward? Leo froze for a heartbeat, his eyes widening slightly, softening his usual aloofness and bringing out that boyish charm again. His eyes were truly captivating. Narrowed, they held a cool distance that dared you to approach. Wide, the coolness vanished, replaced by youthful appeal and an undeniable cuteness. Yes, that was the word, cute. What do you want? He asked, his voice a fraction lower. My heart skipped a beat. I beckoned him closer with a single finger. He obediently leaned down, tilting his head. I leaned in and pressed a soft, fleeting kiss to his cheek. Just this is reward enough. Leo jerked back as if shocked, his hand flying to his cheek, his ears flushed scarlet. You. He didn't finish, but the mortified shyness in his eyes told me everything he couldn't articulate. I was just about to nod, to perhaps jokingly tell him I'll take responsibility, when my phone rang, shattering the moment. I turned, retrieving my bag from the sofa behind me, and pulled out my phone. The caller ID read Julian. Instantly, all the charged energy, the reckless impulse, dissipated like smoke as if doused with cool, sobering water. Your keys, Julian's voice came through the line, calm and even. You left them at the hospital. Quickly checked my purse. My garage key fob was missing, but I had spares at home. Leave them there for now, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I'll get them when I pick you up in a couple of days. There was a slight pause in his breathing on the other end, then a soft, okay. It hit me only after I hung up. This was the first time I had a legitimate reason to see Julian and actively chose not to. I stood there slightly stunned, the phone still in my hand. A warm hand rested on my shoulder, making me jump slightly. Leo stood behind me, leaning in close again, his breath hot and sharp near my ear. "You're awfully good to your ex-boyfriend," he murmured, his voice laced with an unmistakable acidity. "Buying phones, picking him up from the hospital. Is this how all older sisters are?" The jealousy was palpable. I sidestepped the accusation, opting for deflection. "Yep, that's how we are," I teased lightly. "Do you like it?" Leo gripped my shoulders gently, turning me to face him. His brows were furrowed, his expression serious. "I haven't even had a proper girlfriend, and you're still tangled up with your ex. What the hell is there to like?" His bluntness, his raw honesty left me speechless. Perhaps sensing my silence, he dropped his hands and looked away, fiddling awkwardly with the cuff of his shirt. He looked uncomfortable, almost embarrassed. "It's fine if you don't change," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. He sounded hurt. Despite the arrogant facade and casual words, I heard the vulnerability underneath. "I'll change," I said firmly, and I knew I would. Not just for Leo but for myself. I needed to cut the cord. I needed to stop letting Julian occupy the forefront of my mind and conversations. Stop letting his shadow dictate my actions. I deliberately drank too much with Leo and his friends that night. The alcohol haze conveniently blurred the edges of my conscience, momentarily silencing the nagging voice of propriety, making it easier to shamelessly bring Leo back to my apartment. His kisses trailed down my neck, hot, fervent, almost reverent. His fingers were long, nimble, exploring with an intoxicating mix of confidence and discovery. I arched against him, hands clutching the cool cotton sheets, lost in the sensation. Then unbidden, Julian's pale, impassive face flashed in my mind. A sharp stab of pain, of guilt, lanced through me. Almost without thinking, I pushed Leo away. He knelt before me on the bed, his eyes glazed with desire, looking both wounded and impossibly alluring. "Did I hurt you?" he asked, his voice hoarse with suppressed need, laced with a carefulness that mirrored my own pathetic state in that moment. Something inside me crumbled. I bit my lip, averting my gaze. "No," I mumbled. Maybe we should stop. We're both drunk." "I'm perfectly sober," Leo stated firmly, his jaw tightening, a hint of frustration mixing with the desire in his eyes. Our eyes met. Seeing him grit his teeth, fighting both his own arousal and his irritation with me, I finally lost my head completely. I leaned back in, closing the distance, and gently bit his Adam's apple. The sleepless night that followed felt like Leo's revenge. Revenge for the interruption, for the flicker of hesitation. Only I knew it wasn't teasing or a game on my part. It was my conscience making a brief, flickering appearance, a spark of residual decency, before being utterly consumed by the sheer force of his youthful beauty and undisguised want. When I woke the next morning, the first thing I saw was Leo, propped up on an elbow, gazing at me intently. Instinctively, I grabbed his discarded t-shirt from the floor beside the bed and tossed it at him. "Put this on." He wrinkled his nose in distaste. "It's dirty." "So you're planning on running around naked?" I retorted, rolling my eyes. The audacity of youth shone through his teasing grin. He raised an eyebrow suggestively. "If you don't mind, sister, then sure, why not?" The word shameless died in my throat. I turned my back pointedly, pulling the duvet higher. "Just lie there and amuse yourself for a bit. I'll go downstairs and buy you some clothes." But somehow he'd silently moved behind me, his arms snaking around my waist, pulling me back against his warm, bare chest. He whispered huskily in my ear, his breath tickling my skin. "So thoughtful, sister." The temperature in the room climbed several degrees. Realizing what was about to happen, I clutched my aching lower back, a casualty of the night's activities, and managed to push him away weakly. "Get back in bed." Perhaps startled by my sudden sternness, he blinked at me, a stray lock of dark hair sticking up adorably, looking endearingly bewildered. I couldn't help the small chuckle that escaped me as I headed for the shower. I returned with fresh clothes and breakfast. Tossing the bag with the clothes onto the bed, I announced, "Got breakfast. Get dressed and come eat." Leo just stared at me intently, an eyebrow raised. Confused, I met his gaze. "What?" He leaned close and whispered something incredibly suggestive, referencing the new clothes in his current state, that made my face burn instantly. Damn it. Just wear them for now. I snapped, flustered. Eat breakfast and go home to change. Seriously, young people were just too much sometimes. Later I drove him home. Pulling up to his apartment building, I rested my arm on the open window, waiting for him to get out. He unbuckled his seatbelt but made no move to leave, just sat there watching me. Get out, I prompted, trying to sound patient. What are you waiting for? I have to get to the office. Leo's expression instantly darkened. He swung his long legs out of the car and stalked off towards the entrance, looking thoroughly annoyed. I watched him go, slightly baffled by his sudden mood shift. Before I could even think about pulling away from the curb, he suddenly reappeared, having apparently forgotten something, or changed his mind. He circled around to my side, leaned down, cupped my face firmly and kissed me hard. Watching him catch his breath afterwards, his eyes still stormy but also holding a hint of vulnerability, I finally understood his anger. A strange ache bloomed in my chest, damp and vulnerable like his eyes. Don't act like you're just dropping off a hookup. Leo hissed, the words sharp and demanding. Despite the situation, I couldn't help but burst out laughing at his dramatic pronouncement. He really could overthink things. Okay, I get it, I conceded, softening. Go on up. But as the car pulled away, navigating the concrete canyons of the city towards my office, my grip on the steering wheel tightened. Not a hookup, he'd insisted. Then what were we? Boyfriend and girlfriend? I licked my lips, a familiar uncertainty creeping back in. For now, I chose not to define whatever this complicated, exhilarating, and slightly terrifying thing was between us. Julian was discharged from the hospital. When I arrived to pick him up, he was already dressed, sitting on the sofa in his room reading a book. His legs were crossed elegantly and the morning sunlight fell gently across him, illuminating the fine lines of his face. If you ignored the cool remoteness in his eyes, you might almost mistake him for an angel. He heard me enter and looked up. For a fleeting second, I almost thought I saw genuine warmth in his gaze, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Let's go, I said, deliberately breaking the illusion. I'll take you home. Julian remained silent for most of the drive. It wasn't until we were nearing his apartment complex that he finally spoke. Where have you been these past few days? Doing what? I replied, turning a corner, my voice deliberately casual, perhaps a little too dismissive. Busy with company stuff, obviously. An indefinable chill seemed to enter the car. We hadn't been talking much before, but the silence had felt comfortable. Now it felt heavy, charged with unspoken tension. I couldn't resist glancing sideways at Julian. He truly was beautiful, exquisitely crafted, almost unnervingly perfect. But now, his long brows were knitted almost imperceptibly, his thin lips pressed together, making them seem even paler than usual. He radiated displeasure. What's wrong? The old habit, the ingrained reflex of feeling anxious and responsible for his moods, resurfaced despite my best efforts. Julian's brow smoothed slightly, his expression clearing as if by conscious effort. Nothing, he said dismissively. Then, his voice softening marginally. You went through a lot for me this time. Let me treat you to dinner tomorrow as thanks. Tomorrow? My mind immediately flashed to Leo. Leo had asked me out repeatedly over the past week. Feeling guilty about the Chanel incident and unsure how to navigate our undefined relationship, I'd put him off again and again, making him quite unhappy. I'd finally promised him dinner tomorrow to make up for it. The refusal lodged in my throat. Felt foreign, wrong. In all the years I'd known him, I had never refused Julian. It felt like a fundamental skill I simply hadn't learned. Julian watched me intently, his eyes sharp, his voice cool. You have plans? His direct question somehow made it easier. A soft yes escaped me. Julian paused, a brief flicker of something unreadable, surprise? Disappointment? Crossing his eyes before his expression became distant and unreadable again. Some other time then, he said evenly. Watching his retreating back as he got out of the car later, I couldn't help a small wry smile. Some other time with Julian usually meant never. He hadn't changed, not really. Even amnesia couldn't alter his fundamental nature. The next evening, I arrived at the restaurant Leo had chosen. It had a dark, intimate color scheme, the kind of place that felt perfect for clandestine affairs or passionate encounters. I spotted him, Immediately, leaning back against the plush velvet of the booth, head bent over his phone. The cool blue light from the screen illuminated his face, making him look strikingly aloof, almost untouchable. I realized then with a jolt that I'd always been drawn to this type. The kind that seemed just out of reach, radiating a cool confidence that bordered on arrogance. He glanced up as I approached, his chin lifting slightly. His eyes instantly brightened with undisguised pleasure, a wide happy grin spreading across his face before he quickly schooled his features, letting his lips thin into a deliberately flat line. "Hard to get a date with you, sister," he drawled, his tone mock-sulky. "Off the bed and out of mind, huh?" "Busy," I murmured, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. How many times had Julian brushed me off with the same vague, dismissive excuse? Before his expression could completely freeze over into genuine annoyance, I quickly reached across the table and grasped his hand, squeezing it gently. I forced my voice to sound genuinely apologetic. "I'm sorry. It won't happen again, okay? If you really miss me that much, you can always come find me at my office, all right?" A smile immediately bloomed across his face, chasing away the shadows, lighting up his eyes from within. He tilted his chin up with that familiar touch of playful arrogance. "I'm busy too, you know," he retorted, though the smile remained. "Okay," I replied, smiling back. "When you're free, then." After dinner with Leo, my phone rang. It was Marcus, our mutual childhood friend. "Get yourself over to my family's winery," he demanded without preamble. "Julian's out of the hospital, and you didn't even say anything? Are we celebrating his recovery?" I asked dryly. "Celebrating your breakup, obviously," Marcus replied with a low chuckle. The background was quiet. He was clearly hiding somewhere to make the call. I turned the car around, heading towards the winery, unable to suppress a laugh. "Hardly a cause for celebration, Marcus. This bunch of childhood friends could be really cutting sometimes. They'd never hesitated to call me Julian's devoted lapdog, the loyal follower trailing pathetically in his wake." Marcus hummed meaningfully into the phone, the sound full of unspoken disagreement. He didn't elaborate, probably thinking I'd finally escaped a life sentence of unrequited pining, and didn't need further convincing that it was, indeed, a joyous occasion. "He has amnesia," I stated flatly, pressing down on the accelerator a little harder than necessary. The pushback pinned me slightly to the seat, my heart giving an odd thump. "Lost the last 3 years of his memory." "What?" Marcus's voice was sharp with shock and disbelief, laced with a sudden anxiety, as if sensing impending disaster or, more likely, complicated drama. Annoyed by his predictable overreaction, I hung up. Parking my car, I wandered into the main tasting room of the winery. The low murmur of conversation and clinking glasses filled the air. Immediately heard someone jokingly referring to Julian. Now that he'd lost 3 years of memory, was he practically a kid brother again? I internally scoffed. As if Julian could lose 10 years of memory and still be more emotionally mature and self-possessed than anyone else in this room. I truly didn't know where they found the audacity to tease him. There was an empty seat next to both Julian and Marcus. Before I could even decide where to sit, Marcus frantically waved me over. "Sophia! Over here!" His face screamed gossip emergency, radiating an eagerness to dissect the situation that I found intensely irritating. Reluctantly, I walked over and sat down beside him. He immediately pushed a glass of wine towards me, then leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Sophia, look, I've watched you love Julian all this time through everything. Just give him a little more time, okay? Let him figure things out. Wasn't he literally just celebrating our breakup 5 minutes ago? Now he was playing peacemaker?" Annoyance simmered inside me. I took a long gulp of the rich red wine, frowning. "You said you watched me go through it all," I countered, keeping my voice low despite my irritation, not wanting to cause a scene. "Are you his friend but not mine? Why should I be the one to wait any longer?" Marcus fell silent, clearly taken aback by my uncharacteristic resistance. Finally, he offered a ridiculously unconvincing, almost pleading, "Julian loves you, Sophia." "Loves my ass," I muttered, not bothering to muffle the words this time. Julian, sitting nearby, must have heard me. His gaze drifted over, cool and utterly emotionless. "That's love? Right. And besides, whatever fragile possibility might have existed felt irrevocably shattered now. It was too late. I'd impulsively, perhaps recklessly, brought Leo into the mix. Regret was a useless emotion, but responsibility wasn't. I had made choices. Since Julian was newly discharged and abstaining, he became the designated watcher while the rest of us drank. Predictably, I ended up needing a ride home, and Marcus, with dubious helpfulness, arranged for Julian to be my driver. Before leaving, I shot Marcus a long, pointed look. Seriously, the man needed professional help. I leaned back in the plush passenger seat of my own car, closing my eyes, letting the familiar scent and feel of the interior soothe my slightly frayed nerves. Julian navigated the winery's winding driveway, the headlights cutting through the darkness. "Didn't you say you had plans today?" he asked quietly, breaking the silence. "They finished early," I explained tiredly. "Then Marcus called, so I came over." "Ended early," he echoed, his voice flat. "What else?" I responded automatically, not intending any provocation, just answering his observation. But Julian seemed to misinterpret my tone. His thin lips pressed together. "Sophia." His voice was deep, resonant, and heavy with unspoken displeasure. Just my name, nothing more, but the disapproval was unmistakable. His tone snapped me back to reality, making me acutely aware of my situation. A flicker of shame washed over me. Not for moving on, but perhaps for the speed, the seamless transition that felt almost callous even to me. I licked my dry lips. "There's something I need to tell you." "Go on," Julian replied coolly, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, not even glancing my way. His very coolness, his apparent indifference, paradoxically bolstered my resolve. "I found a boyfriend," I stated, the words coming out more easily this time. He told everyone at the winery that we'd broken up. Marcus had confirmed it. Surely he wanted distance, wanted this chapter closed. The thought made my voice steadier, more certain. The screech of tires split the night air as Julian slammed on the brakes, bringing the car to an abrupt, jolting halt. Finally, he turned his head, his face pale and almost glacial in the dim dashboard light, his eyes boring into me with an intensity I'd never seen before. "What did you say?" he demanded, his voice dangerously low. His pallor, his raw reaction was startling. Julian never wore his emotions so openly. My heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to break free. Suddenly, unexpectedly, I actually felt guilty. Flustered, I tried to bluster my way through it. "Didn't we break up? And you have amnesia. Think about it, Julian. I chased you for 3 years. 3 whole years to finally get you to say yes." I swallowed hard. That means right now our relationship, or whatever it was, is missing 3 crucial years. And, honestly, a bitter voice inside me added, even when we were supposedly together, it felt like we weren't really together at all. It was missing far more than just 3 years. Julian's long eyes narrowed, a humorless, almost sarcastic smile touching his lips. His knuckles whitened as his grip tightened on the steering wheel. "As you wish," he clipped out, the words sharp as ice shards. Then he slammed his foot back on the accelerator. The car lurched forward, tires squealing slightly, rapidly picking up speed. We were definitely speeding. Oh God, this was still my car. The air in the car crackled with a tension so thick it was almost suffocating. I didn't understand his reaction. It made no sense. My mind abruptly, uncontrollably flashed back. Graduation night. I was mingding da joy, mingding as we dead drunk, reeking of cheap celebratory alcohol, stumbling slightly as I knocked on Julian's apartment door. He opened it, one hand braced casually against the doorframe, his brow slightly furrowed as he took in my disheveled state. His voice, cool and clear as a mountain spring, sliced through my alcohol-induced haze. "Sophia." He was leaving soon, heading overseas to study further. I had to stay behind, rooted in our hometown, involved in my family's business. I wouldn't be able to follow him, to orbit his life as I always had. If I didn't speak now, tonight, the distance and time would create insurmountable barriers. I couldn't allow that. Taking a deep breath, I surged forward, throwing my arms around his neck. He reacted instinctively, his hands landing surely on my waist to steady me. "Julian," I whispered against his collarbone. My alcohol tolerance wasn't actually that bad, but the drunkenness provided a convenient shield for my raw vulnerability, for the near certainty of his rejection. But knowing the likely outcome and doing it anyway, that felt like the greatest act of love I could offer him. Julian deftly maneuvered me inside, shutting the door behind us. He gently guided me towards the sofa, then turned as if to get water. I grabbed his wrist, my grip surprisingly strong. Don't go. Just getting you some water, he replied. His tone as cool and remote as ever, yet somehow filtered through my desperate hope. I heard a trace of underlying gentleness. That tiny, possibly imagined spark of warmth gave me the courage I needed. I love you, Julian, I confessed, the words tumbling out in a rush. Silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the frantic pounding of my own heart. Finally, Julian gently pried my hand from his wrist. You're drunk, he stated quietly, denying my feelings yet offering me an out, a way to save face. Gentle and incredibly cruel all at once. I forced my heavy eyelids open, meeting his gaze directly, summoning every last shred of courage. I'm not, I insisted, my voice trembling slightly. I've loved you ever since I understood what love even was. Julian fell silent again. His fingers curled slightly at his sides, his long lashes sweeping down, hiding his expression. I knew him too well. This was his tell. He was hesitating, annoyed, weighing his options. Even if it was just pity, just a reluctance to inflict further pain, I wanted a chance. Any chance. A chance to love him openly without the constant, suffocating need for secrecy. Let's try, I pleaded, the words barely audible. Let me pursue you, okay? I hadn't wanted to cry, hadn't intended to, but the raw vulnerability of the plea tore the tears from me, hot and stinging against my lashes. Julian's dark eyes fixed on mine, his gaze deep and unreadable. Finally, a soft, resigned sigh escaped him. Okay, he murmured, the single word sounding like a reluctant concession. Overwhelming, disbelieving joy washed over me. I opened my mouth, wanting to ask again, to confirm, to make sure I hadn't imagined it, but he had already turned and walked towards the small kitchen alcove to pour that glass of water. I sat there, clutching the warm glass he brought me, taking tiny, careful sips. He stood beside the sofa, silent, a towering, enigmatic presence. My heart was pounding so loudly I was terrified he could hear it. I'll walk you back, Julian stated finally, his tone leaving no room for argument as he headed towards the door. I nodded numbly, scrambling to my feet and falling into step beside him. We walked through the quiet, sleeping campus streets, bathed in the hazy yellow glow of the streetlights. We had both moved off campus into apartments in the same complex. A decision I'd celebrated at the time, thrilled by the proximity. Now suddenly I regretted living so close. The walk was over far too quickly. Good night, I murmured, standing at my door, unable to tear my gaze away from him. Julian's long eyes seemed to curve almost imperceptibly at the corners. He gave a slight nod, a minimalist acknowledgement, before turning away. I watched his slender, retreating back disappear around the corner towards the elevator, my heart a chaotic mix of soaring hope and gnawing uncertainty. Only then did I finally fumble with my keys and let myself into my dark apartment. I didn't sleep a wink that night. When I finally drifted off, the sky was already beginning to pale with the first hints of dawn. I woke late, the sun high in the sky. Day one after the confession. A giddy excitement bubbled inside me. I chose a fitted red dress, something bold and confident, and spent extra time carefully applying my makeup in the mirror. Then, heart-pounding, I called Julian. Want to go out today? I asked, trying to keep my voice light and casual. No, he replied without hesitation. I'm already coordinating with my advisor. We're working on a project today. I heard the faint clink of a glass being set down on his end. I could almost picture him perfectly, sitting at his desk, silver-rimmed, glasses perched on his nose, focused and coolly detached. The image, instead of deterring me, made my heart melt with a familiar ache. Oh, well then maybe I can buy some groceries and come over? I could cook for you, I offered brightly. He paused. I could almost feel his hesitation, sense the refusal forming on his lips. But then, likely remembering his reluctant promise from the night before, he sighed softly. Okay. I sensed the subtle shift, the slight concession, and was instantly filled with renewed motivation. Humming happily, I headed to the supermarket, carefully selecting fresh vegetables and prime cuts of meat. An hour later, laden with bags, I knocked on his door again. He answered wearing comfortable gray sweats, the soft fabric somehow neutralizing his usual austerity, making him look almost gentle, approachable. He took the grocery bags from me wordlessly and headed straight for the kitchen. I followed him in, surprised to find him already expertly washing vegetables at the sink. Watching his back, the smooth, efficient movements of his hands, I indulged in a brief, sweet fantasy of us already married, sharing domestic chores. Let me, I offered, stepping forward. Together, he replied without looking up, placing the rinsed vegetables into a colander. Together was even better. Felt even more like my fantasy. Later, looking at the table laden with the dishes we'd prepared side by side, taking the first bite, I felt certain I'd never taste anything more delicious in my entire life. Julian remained buried in work for the rest of that summer. I started getting involved in my family's company, taking on more responsibilities, but I still made time to see him whenever possible, finding excuses. Maybe cooking another meal, suggesting a short evening walk, just being near him. Then he left for the U.S. It was only with the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean separating us that I truly understood the brutal tyranny of distance, especially with someone whose heart wasn't fully engaged. Someone who doesn't love you back simply doesn't have the inclination or the energy to maintain a connection, to humor your affections over crackling phone lines and delayed text messages. My life became a cycle of endless waiting, punctuated by sharp pangs of heartache, followed by forced resignation, only to start all over again. The replies when they came were always variations on the same theme. Sorry, just saw this. Busy. Just finished in the lab. To combat the constant, gnawing feeling of impending loss, the sense that he was slipping further away with each passing day, I became a frequent flyer. Over those 3 years, I bought a total of 172 round-trip tickets to the U.S. On the day of his graduation, I stood waiting for him, holding a large bouquet of vibrant flowers. I saw him from a distance walking towards me, silhouetted against the bright California sun. He looked impossibly radiant, almost ethereal, like a god descended to earth. And in that moment, watching him approach, a sudden unexpected sense of peace washed over me. Loving him didn't necessarily mean possessing him. Maybe, I thought with a pang of bittersweet clarity, preserving this unrequited, slightly pathetic love at its most poignant, hopeful moment, right here, right now, was the best path forward. Letting go before the inevitable decline. Julian, congratulations, I said, striding forward confidently, thrusting the heavy bouquet into his arms. His lips curved into a rare, genuinely gentle smile. His eyes, catching the sunlight, held an almost mesmerizing quality. So captivating, in fact, that it instantly shattered my newfound resolution, making me want to try just one more time. One final gamble. It's been 3 years, I began, forcing a light, playful tone to mask the frantic fluttering in my chest. Want to finally make it official? Be together? This is the last time I'm asking, promise. To my utter astonishment, Julian's long eyes crinkled slightly at the corners in amusement. Okay, he said simply. Bewilderment instantly outweighed joy. I felt completely wrong-footed, unsure what to do or say next. I didn't even know where to put my hands, ending up nervously twisting the hem of my dress. Julian's gaze dropped to my fidgeting hands, then lifted back to my face. He freed one hand from the bouquet he was still holding and reached out, taking my hand in his. His fingers laced firmly through mine. Still nervous? He teased gently. His rare teasing instantly put me at ease, breaking the spell of awkwardness. Realization dawned, slow and then overwhelming. Joy flooded. In warm and intoxicating. Acting on pure impulse, I threw my arms around his neck and gave him a quick, light kiss on the lips. His eyes darkened slightly in response, and I noticed, with a thrill, the tips of his ears turning a faint shade of pink. But even fate, it seemed, thought this relationship was forced, unnatural. It had intervened, resetting everything brutally back to the beginning. We're here. Julian's voice, cold and clipped, pulled me abruptly from the vividness of the past. He still sounded furious. I nodded numbly, wrenched back to the tense present inside my car. I reached for the seatbelt release. Just as I swung one leg out, ready to escape the suffocating atmosphere, I heard his voice again, tight with restraint. Sophia. I turned back, looking at him questioningly. He stared straight ahead, his jaw tight, clearly struggling for words, radiating waves of frustration and something else I couldn't quite decipher. The painful truth solidified in my mind. So, even 3 years ago, after everything, I was already just an option to him. Something convenient perhaps, but ultimately non-essential. Like chicken ribs, edible but mostly bone, offering little substance. A slight waste to discard, but not truly desired. I leaned against the sleek curve of the butterfly door, a humorless laugh escaping my lips. Julian, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Even the universe seems to think we're wrong for each other, forcing this ridiculous reset, giving us both a chance to choose differently. What are you still hesitating about? Look forward, I pleaded silently. Don't look back. Don't make this harder for me than it already is. Yes, realizing what I had truly meant to the Julian of 3 years ago hurt deeply. Me, Sophia Bellwether, always striving for perfection in everything I did. How had I managed to spend so many years of my life reducing myself to someone's backup plan, their path of least resistance? How utterly pathetic. Hangovers are brutal. The next morning I couldn't drag myself out of bed. The thought of facing the day, the office, the world felt insurmountable. I was just about to message my assistant to say I was taking a sick day when my phone rang. Sister. Leo's voice, thick and sleepy, yet somehow energetic, purred through the phone. Just woke up and already thinking of you. The boyish charm was undeniable. Despite the pounding in my head, I smiled, eyes still closed. Flatterer. In that case, come over. And bring breakfast. Leo's voice instantly turned sickeningly sweet and enthusiastic, making promises about the feast he would procure. His cheerfulness was infectious, lifting my mood considerably. Finding a new reserve of energy, I managed to haul myself out of bed, run enduring the lingering discomfort, and treated myself to a long hot bath and a meticulous skincare routine. I had just finished applying fragrant body oil when the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I saw Leo standing there, grinning, hands laden with bags brimming with breakfast cartons. I took them from him, muttering, "How can I possibly eat all this?" "Try a bite of everything," he instructed cheerfully. "Are you crazy? Spoiled rich boy," I grumbled good-naturedly. Suddenly, strong hands clasped my waist from behind, pulling me firmly into his warm embrace. Leo nuzzled my earlobe, his breath warm against my skin. "You smell amazing, sister," he murmured huskily. "And since I'm such a spoiled boy, how about you? Take care of me first." "Get lost," I retorted automatically, but the word barely left my lips before I playfully bit my tongue. He chuckled, then turned my face towards him and kissed me thoroughly. So, it turned out he ate first and I ate breakfast later. Youthful energy, truly boundless. It seemed that ever since that clarifying, albeit painful, conversation with Julian, a weight had lifted from my shoulders. I felt lighter, freer. My interactions with Leo were no longer tinged with avoidance or uncertainty. I found myself actively enjoying his vibrant energy, his undisguised affection, and readily returning it. Until, walking hand in hand out of the Chanel boutique one afternoon, flushed with the simple pleasure of shopping together, we ran straight into Julian. Almost instantaneously, purely by reflex, I snatched my hand back from Leo's grasp. I don't know why I did it. The action was subconscious, immediate. I didn't dare look at Leo's expression, didn't have the courage to face Julian's either. A tight, uncomfortable knot formed in my chest. A confusing mix of guilt and fear. Fear of whom? Fear of what? Losing Leo? Hurting Julian? Or simply fear of the messy, complicated situation I had created? Julian approached us, his steps measured, his expression calm. He gave me a level look, his eyes deep and unreadable, but under his gaze I felt inexplicably small, inadequate, like a child caught doing something wrong. Only after Julian had walked past us and disappeared down the mall corridor did I finally turn and notice that Leo had stepped back, creating a subtle distance between us. He was leaning casually against the polished chrome railing, but the posture was deceptive. His expression was cold, radiating suppressed anger and a sharp edge of bitterness. He was waiting for an explanation I couldn't seem to form. I pinched the bridge of my nose, feeling suddenly weary. It was just instinct. I began, the words sounding weak and insufficient even to my own ears. It truly was subconscious. There had been no conscious thought behind the action, no intention to hurt or deceive. Leo's tongue pressed sharply against the inside of his cheek, a small telling gesture of irritation. He cut me off before I could flounder further. "Ex-boyfriend?" he asked flatly. He didn't seem to need confirmation. A harsh, mocking laugh escaped him, devoid of any real humor. "Still hung up on him, huh?" he accused, his voice laced with sudden anger. "Then why the hell did you drag me into this?" Without waiting for an answer, he turned sharply and strode away, his long legs eating up the distance quickly, almost as if he were fleeing the scene. Watching his retreating back, my heart ached with a sharp pang of regret. It wasn't that I was still hung up on Julian. Not anymore. I was forgetting him, actively moving on. But Leo wouldn't believe that now. My own involuntary reaction had betrayed me. Leo didn't contact me for a whole week after that day at the mall. I opened his chat window on my phone countless times, typed out messages, then deleted them, never managing to hit send. It seemed that after the years spent orbiting Julian, after the constant fear of saying or doing the wrong thing, I automatically held back a part of myself from everyone even now. A defense mechanism I couldn't seem to switch off. A heavy fatigue settled over me, bone deep and emotional. I spent the evening curled up on my sofa, drinking expensive wine straight from the bottle, too lethargic and miserable even to bother finding a glass. The doorbell rang, startling me. Shaky and slightly unsteady, I stumbled to the door and pulled it open. It was Leo. He looked thinner, worn out, shadows under his eyes, and yet somehow devastatingly more handsome than ever. His eyelashes were lowered, casting long shadows on his cheeks, projecting an air of vulnerability that was strangely alluring, almost dangerous. It made you want to either break him completely or throw yourself at his feet and let him break you. "Couldn't you just try to smooth things over?" he asked, his voice incredibly soft, thick with hurt, almost a childish whine. Even one word would have been enough. Without a moment's hesitation, I threw myself into his arms, wrapping my own tightly around his waist, burying my face against his chest. "Leo," I choked out, my voice muffled by his shirt. "From now on, every single time I upset you, I promise I'll make it up to you, okay?" He held me tightly, his arms strong and reassuring. "Can't you just not upset me?" he countered, the 3 knots in his question growing heavier, more plaintive with each repetition. Yet the arms around my waist held me fiercely, carefully controlled, as if afraid to hurt me despite his own pain. "Yes," I thought with sudden clarity. "I can." His vulnerability, his willingness to come back, his unwavering choice to be here despite my screw-up. In that single moment, it felt like it healed years of my own insecurity, years of feeling inadequate and second-best, years of crippling self-doubt fostered by Julian's cool indifference. That night, Leo was more intense than usual, his passion burning brighter, yet tempered with a new restraint, a tenderness that hadn't been there before. Afterwards, lying tangled together in the dim glow of the bedside lamp, I cupped his face gently, gazing into his eyes. Those beautiful eyes I admired so much were now glistening, soft and impossibly tender. I tilted my chin up, pressing a soft kiss to his damp eyelashes. "I like you, Leo," I whispered, the words feeling true and right in a way they never had with Julian. He stilled for a fraction of a second, his breath catching. Then came an explosion of joyous fervor, a renewed passion fueled by my simple confession. Leo stayed at my place for the next few days, seamlessly integrating himself into my space, my life. One evening, while I was lounging on the chaise lounge, applying body oil after a bath, I casually suggested, "You know, you spend so much time here anyway. Why don't you just go home, pack your things, and move in officially?" "What did you say, sister?" Leo asked, his voice suddenly soft, almost unreal, as if he couldn't believe what he'd heard. I glanced at his reflection in the vanity mirror opposite me. He stood behind the chaise, eyes wide, looking utterly adorable and slightly stunned. Unable to resist, I indulged my mischievous streak. "If you don't want to, never mind," I teased lightly. "I want to," he replied immediately, his ears flushing a telltale pink, accepting my playful manipulation without protest. My heart felt full to bursting, warm and content. Everything seemed to be moving in the right direction, finally settling into a comfortable, happy rhythm. And then Julian texted me, "Come down. I'm in your company parking lot." A strange jolt, a prickle of unease went through me. Not a good feeling. With a sigh, I went down. I opened the passenger door to Julian's familiar car, sleek, black, expensive, and slid into the seat. Beside him, I studied his profile, as cool and perfect as marble, radiating a familiar chill. "What's wrong?" I asked quietly. Julian's long lashes trembled slightly. He turned his head slowly to face me, his eyes dark pools of intensity that seemed to swallow the light. "I remember," he stated flatly. Hearing those words, my mind went blank for a second. The possibility had always lingered in the back of my mind. I'd never truly assumed he'd forget forever. So, the shock was quickly followed by a strange sense of resignation. I processed it quickly, calmly. I nodded slowly. "Oh, well, that's good then." At my unexpectedly calm reaction, Julian's eyes narrowed slightly. His voice turned cold, so devoid of warmth it felt like he was bestowing charity. Sophia, I never intended to break up with you. A flicker of resentment I couldn't quite name, perhaps the ghost of years of frustration, flared up inside me. My own tone turned cold in response. Well, then let's just say I wanted to break up with you, Julian. Speaking so bluntly, so assertively, to Julian for the first time felt strangely empowering, yet my heart still hammered nervously against my ribs. To cover my sudden unease, I added quickly, perhaps a little too defensively. Besides, things are really good with him now. I'll introduce you to sometime. Julian's face instantly darkened, his features tightening into a mask of cold fury. He reached out with surprising speed, gripping my chin firmly, tilting my face towards him. His touch was hard, demanding, a flash of the innate arrogance I always knew lay beneath his polished surface. I had always known Julian was inherently arrogant, cold, perhaps even ruthless, traits carefully masked by years of excellent breeding and self-control. Love, I realized, meant seeing all that darkness and still choosing to fly into the flame, moth-like and doomed. Not loving meant feeling instantly violated, repulsed, the moment the mask slipped. Humans are inherently biased, ruled by the heart, not logic. Before I could even frown or voice my displeasure at his forceful grip, Julian released me abruptly. His anger seemed to recede as quickly as it had flared, his expression smoothing back into its usual impassivity. You don't need to provoke me to make a point, he said, his voice regaining its usual cool cadence. I do like you, Sophia. He'd never said those words to me in all the years I'd chased him, pleaded with him, loved him. Hearing them now, spoken so easily, so matter-of-factly, felt strangely jarring, unsettling. Threw me off balance. But I don't like you anymore, I replied, lowering my head, unable to meet his intense gaze. My voice was soft, gentle, yet unwavering, a final, quiet response to the boy, the man who had defined my entire youth. I'm not trying to provoke you. I've just figured things out. I've moved on. Loving him for so long, pouring all my energy into him, I'd finally remembered the importance of loving myself. Being with Leo, experiencing the effortless give and take of mutual affection, had shown me what a healthy relationship could feel like. It had meaning. Get out, Julian commanded, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. His face was white, his lips bloodless, radiating extreme distress despite his attempt at composure. I nodded numbly, relieved in a strange way. I reached down, unbuckling my seatbelt, ready to escape the suffocating tension in the car. I wouldn't bother arguing about his harsh tone, his abrupt dismissal. It was over. This was the end. But just as I swung one leg out of the car, a strong hand clamped down hard on my arm, yanking me back with surprising force. Sophia, Julian hissed, his voice rough with emotion I'd never heard from him before. How dare you just walk away? You were the one who liked me first. You were the one who pursued me, tangled yourself up in my life. Why are you the one leaving me now? Why do you get to be the one to discard me? I looked up, startled, straight into Julian's eyes. They were reddened, raw with pain and disbelief. His expression was tight with restraint, a desperate vulnerability warring with his innate pride. Because he was so devastatingly beautiful, the look acquired an air of wounded vulnerability that seemed utterly foreign to him, completely out of character. Julian had never been like this. An inexplicable, sharp ache spread through my chest. I'm sorry, I whispered, the only words I could find. I don't want her sorry, Julian bit out, his grip tightening on my wrist, the pressure sharp, painful. I looked down at his long, pale hand clamped around my arm, the knuckles white with strain. It hurt. Involuntarily, my mind flashed to Leo. If it were Leo holding me like this, he would have noticed my pain by now. He would have released his grip immediately, apologized, his concern genuine. That right there was the difference. That was the reason. Reaching up with my free hand, I deliberately, firmly, pried his fingers loose. I rubbed my reddened wrist, my voice completely steady now, devoid of doubt or hesitation. My sorry was for the years of entanglement, for disturbing your peace for so long, I clarified calmly. It was not an apology for choosing to leave you today. Without waiting for a response, I turned, ducked out of the car and walked away. I kept my step steady, my pace brisk, forcing myself not to look back. Deep down, I felt no regret, no lingering sadness, only a profound sense of release, of finality. So why, I wondered with detached curiosity, were tears suddenly streaming down my face? I didn't wipe them away. I didn't dare. I was afraid Julian might misunderstand it as lingering attachment, as weakness. And I wasn't weak anymore. I thought I had made things crystal clear that day. I truly didn't expect to see Julian waiting for me when I went downstairs later that night to pick up a package delivery. He was perched on the hood of his black car, which was parked in the shadows near the entrance of my apartment building. He blended into the darkness, a figure cloaked in expensive black fabric, yet I knew instantly it was him. It seemed that loving someone for so long, even after consciously deciding to let them go, gifted you the unerring instinctual ability to spot them in a crowd, to sense their presence even before seeing them clearly. My hand tightened on the cardboard package I was holding. After a moment's hesitation, I walked over and stopped directly in front of him. "What are you doing here?" I asked quietly. "Why don't you like me anymore?" Julian asked softly, his head bowed, his voice thick with genuine confusion. Before I could formulate an answer, his gaze lifted, slowly traveling up my body. It snagged on my neck, lingering on the faint marks Leo had left there earlier. Color flooded Julian's usually pale, impassive face. A startling, desperate crimson that was almost hypnotic in its intensity. His cool fingers reached out, tracing the faint bruises on my skin, pressing down with surprising force. His voice was raspy, raw with an emotion I couldn't identify. Pain? Jealousy? Possession? "Sophia," he choked out. "Tell me nothing happened between you two." Looking at his tormented expression, I felt neither satisfaction nor pity, only a profound sense of weary finality. "Julian," I stated calmly, factually, we broke up. We broke up a long time ago." The word breakup seemed to ignite something volatile within him. His exquisitely sculpted face twisted, the inherent beauty momentarily warped by bitterness, merging into something both captivating and cruel. "We did not." He bit out, each word sharp, denying reality. A flicker of memory surfaced, unbidden. The memory of another girl, the one Julian had once seemed genuinely interested in years ago. Her name echoed in my mind, a name I'd never managed to forget. Ava. Everyone had seen Julian's unusual softness, his attentiveness towards Ava. Thankfully for my younger, desperately insecure self, Ava had been flighty, easily distracted, and they had never actually dated. I had to admit, back then a dark, shameful part of me had felt a secret, vicious glee when Ava moved on to someone else. That corrosive jealousy. The way it must have twisted my own features back then. It probably looked just like Julian's face now. A pang of empathy shot through me. A strange mix of pity for him, trapped in this unexpected torment, and pity for the younger version of myself, consumed by similar feelings. But the truth remained starkly, undeniably clear. Julian didn't love me enough. Not then, not now. His current desperation felt more like wounded pride, like the shock of losing something he'd taken for granted, rather than genuine love. There was one thing I had never admitted to anyone, barely even to myself. I constantly, obsessively, compared how he treated me to how he had treated Ava back then. Sadly, in every comparison I always came up short. "Julian," I said softly but firmly, "you're just unwilling to accept it. You can't handle the fact that after loving you for so long." I suddenly walked away. Voicing the certainty of his insufficient love wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Whatever love is, real love anyway, it doesn't look like this. "Do you even remember Ava?" I thought bitterly. I was so jealous of her, but I couldn't bring myself to say the words aloud. "Sophia, don't invalidate me," Julian pleaded, his voice cracking. His long dark lashes were damp, glistening with unshed tears. I just mistook love for habit." Mistook love for habit? The phrase struck me like a shard of ice plunged deep into my chest, leaving a cold, bleeding wound. Silent but excruciatingly painful. I turned to go, unwilling to dissect these self-inflicted wounds any further, unwilling to rehash the painful past. My current life, my life with Leo, was satisfying. It was real. Suddenly Julian's arms wrapped around my waist from behind, holding me in a crushing embrace, tight, desperate, as if terrified I'd vanish into thin air. His sharp chin dug painfully into my shoulder blade. He buried his face in my hair, whispering, pleading, "Let's start over, Sophia, please. Can we just start over?" I reached back, grabbing his wrists, intending to pry his arms away, to reiterate my refusal. Just as I was about to speak, A tall, familiar figure emerged from the brightly lit building entrance behind us. Leo. He must have been waiting upstairs, wondering why I was taking so long to retrieve a simple package. He froze for a bare second, standing silhouetted against the light. I couldn't read his expression from this distance, couldn't see the look in his eyes. Then, before I could react or call out to him, he turned sharply and walked quickly away from us, heading down the street in the opposite direction. His long strides were urgent, almost frantic, like he was fleeing. He didn't hesitate, didn't look back, didn't pause for even a second. He didn't even dare to come over and confront us, to demand an explanation. The realization hit me with a force that brought fresh tears stinging to my eyes. He was too hurt, too unsure of his place in my life, too afraid of the answer he might receive. "Julian," I said, my voice gaining a new layer of steely resolve fueled by the image of Leo's retreating back. "Do you remember all those years ago when I asked for your permission to pursue you? You agreed. Now please grant me the same respect." I said no. "Can you leave now? Can you please stop bothering me?" The strength seemed to drain instantly from Julian's arms around my waist. I pulled free easily this time. I glanced back at him one last time. His normally dark, deep eyes looked gray now, vacant, utterly devoid of life. His face and lips were unervingly pale, drained of all color. He truly looked like a sculpture then. Exquisitely crafted by a master artist, breathtakingly beautiful, but completely lifeless. Turning away from him for what I knew was the final time, I broke into a run, chasing after the direction Leo had disappeared. He was so hurt he must have hidden himself somewhere nearby, probably trying not to cry. Winter stripped the world bare around us, the air cold enough to make you shiver even before the first snowflakes began to fall. But as I searched frantically for Leo through the deserted streets, my heart felt strangely warm, burning hot with purpose. I thought it might take ages to find him, wandering the cold, empty streets. But lost puppies, even the ones sulking after being scolded, rarely wander too far from home. Maybe they're afraid of getting truly lost, or maybe deep down they're afraid of missing their owner when they finally come out looking for them. I spotted him sitting on the curb outside a brightly lit 24-hour convenience store, just a block away from my building. His eyes were red-rimmed, confirming my suspicion. A mostly full six-pack of beer sat on the pavement at his feet. This picture of youthful dejection had apparently drawn the shy, curious attention of several teenage girls, who were whispering and glancing at him from a safe distance near the store entrance. I walked over quietly and squatted down in front of him. Gently, I took the half-empty beer bottle from his hand. Looking into those damp, miserable eyes, I softened my voice, coaxing him gently. "Come home, okay? Is there still room for me there?" Leo mumbled, reaching automatically to take the beer back. I held on tight, refusing to relinquish it. He looked up, his gaze full of wet, wounded accusation. He looked so young, so vulnerable. I took a deliberate sip of the cold beer, then leaned forward, tilting his chin up with my free hand. I pressed my lips to his, transferring the cool liquid from my mouth to his. "How about," I murmured against his lips, "I feed you the rest like this when we get home? All of it." I gestured towards the remaining unopened bottles in the pack on the ground. Leo followed my gesture, his gaze dropping to the beer pack, then snapping back to my face. His ears instantly flamed red. A petulant, boyish tone crept into his voice, though the hurt was still evident. "Well, I guess that could work," he conceded grudgingly. I glanced over my shoulder at the shocked, whispering gaggle of girls behind him, their hands flying to their mouths. Smiling slightly, I stood up and offered Leo my hand. He ignored it pointedly, scrambling to his feet on his own and stalking off ahead of me with a feigned air of nonchalance, pretending to be angry. I picked up the beer pack, trailing behind him, unable to suppress the laughter bubbling up inside me. "Hey," I called out teasingly after him, "spoiled boy. Just so you know, I didn't agree to let my ex-boyfriend pursue me again. Really. I told you I still prefer younger men." Leo stopped abruptly in his tracks and whirled around to face me, his expression stormy. "So what happens when I get old?" he demanded, his train of thought taking a typically unexpected, slightly absurd turn. Oh, this boy. His brain worked in mysterious ways. I hurried forward, closing the distance between us, and pressed the beer pack into his hands. Then, standing on my tiptoes, I leaned up and pecked him softly on the lips. Then, I whispered conspiratorially, smiling into his surprised eyes. I'll only like the young man named Leo. Walking back towards my building entrance, hand in hand with Leo this time, I noticed Julian hadn't left. His car was still parked in the shadows, a silent, brooding presence. Predictably, the boy beside me stiffened, predictable anger flashing in his eyes again. He stopped, turning to face me, his gaze intense. The redness hadn't fully faded from his eyes, but now it was mixed with a defiant, mischievous glint. "Sister," he announced deliberately, his voice loud enough for Julian to potentially overhear. "I want to kiss you. Right now." Without a moment of hesitation, I looped my arms around his neck and pulled him down towards me. I don't know how intense or passionate Leo's kiss was, because just at that moment, as our lips met, the first snowflakes of the season began to drift down silently from the dark sky, dusting our hair and shoulders. The first snow of the season, kissing the one you love as the world turned white around you. Nothing, absolutely nothing, felt more romantic or more right in that moment. Later, upstairs, he led me inside by the hand, pressed me against the closed apartment door, and then afterwards took care of me with a surprising tenderness. Younger men knew how to be gentle too, I mused. It wasn't about age. When you truly liked someone, when you genuinely cared, kindness became instinct, hardwired into your actions. There was no such thing as mistaking love for habit. Love was action. Love was presence. Love was choosing to stay even when things got difficult. The moonlight outside seemed too bright, casting sharp shadows across the bedroom floor. I slipped out of bed quietly, padding over to the window to draw the heavy curtains. As I reached for the fabric, my gaze snagged on the figure below. Julian was still there, standing beside his car, now dusted with a thin layer of snow, a solitary, almost tragic figure in the cold night. My hand tightened on the curtain fabric. "Leo," I said softly, my back still to the room, my voice barely above a whisper. "Take my phone, send him a message. Tell him to leave." I knew turning to the window, acknowledging Julian's continued presence, would likely bother the man lying warm and sated in my bed behind me. Leo's jealousy, though endearing at times, was also fierce. But I couldn't just stand by and watch the person I had cherished, obsessed over, and poured my heart into for so many years literally freeze out there in the first snow. It wouldn't move me now, wouldn't change my decision, but it felt needlessly cruel, a waste of his health and dignity. Better to let Leo send the message. It would soothe his own insecurities, reaffirm his place, and hopefully, finally, give Julian the undeniable finality he needed to accept. "Okay," Leo replied from the bed. His voice was laced with unconcealed amusement, bordering on smug satisfaction, even a hint of malicious glee. I watched until I saw Julian finally, slowly, get into his car and drive away, his headlights cutting through the falling snow before disappearing around the corner. Only then did I feel a sense of release, of closure. I drew the curtains firmly closed, shutting out the cold night and the ghosts of the past. Strong arms immediately wrapped around me from behind, pulling me back towards the warmth of the bed. Leo spun me around, cupping my face, his expression mock ferocious. "You didn't even delete your chat history with him," he accused, though the anger in his eyes was tempered with possessive satisfaction. "I saw it. All those messages." I reached up, gently covering his beautiful, expressive eyes with my hands, trying to block out the raw jealousy and simmering anger pouring from them. It was almost too much to look at directly. "I'll like you this much too someday," I promised softly, truthfully. "More and more." Leo stilled at my words, his playful anger momentarily forgotten. Then he buried his face in the curve of my neck, his voice muffled against my skin, reverting to that vulnerable boyish whine. "Don't," he mumbled, his tone thick with reluctance and unexpected hurt. "It hurts me to think about you going through all that. Just keep liking me like you do now, sister. That's enough." I thought, holding him tightly, my heart full. Okay. Later, much later, when I finally decided it was time to truly cleanse my digital life, to delete everything related to Julian, or rather, everything related to my own painful, pathetic past of unrequited love, I saw the messages Leo had actually sent from my phone that night. "Dude, sister is exhausted right now. You really don't know how to care about people. Were you seriously expecting her to come down and drive you to the hospital in the middle of the night or something?" Then, a moment later, clearly after scrolling through some of our old one-sided chat history, he had added a second message, fierce and protective. "I'll be good to her. Better than you ever were." I deleted everything else, all the painful reminders of my years spent chasing Julian. But I left Leo's last message undelete. A small, defiant monument in my chat history. Was grateful, profoundly grateful, that someone in this world finally saw, understood, and cared about my years of insecurity, my constant compromising, my quiet suffering. And that someone just happened to be Leo.